Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Michael Rothe, CEO and President of the Canadian Finance and Leasing Association. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
It's great to have you on here, sir. I know our paths have crossed at some US-based equipment finance shows over the years, so excited today to talk about the CFLA and what you guys are up to in 2025.
Yeah, it's great to spend a little time with you. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. So, do you mind just kind of introducing the CFLA, how long you guys have been around, kind of your value proposition to the marketplace, Michael?
Yeah, sure. So the Canadian Finance and Leasing Association is a little bit different than some of the associations you see in the US in that we're a much smaller market. So we represent not just the equipment financing, but also the auto and the fleet sectors as well. We're comprised of about 200 corporate members representing, I'd say, somewhere in excess of 80–85% of the market by volume. Our members are comprised of the large financial institutions, so the scheduled banks, captive finance of the different OEMs, both equipment and auto. So think, John Deere, Caterpillar on the equipment side, Mercedes, Honda on the auto side. And then a group of what we term independent leasing companies. So these are small to medium-sized businesses that are engaged in the asset-based financing and leasing business. That's our regular membership. And then on the associate side, we have all the consultants, law firms, technology firms that service and do business with that sector.
Yeah. Perfect. And how did you get involved with the CFLA? Like, are you from the leasing industry originally, or you just kind of stumble across the foundation?
So no, actually, prior to joining the CFLA, I had just under 20 years of experience as a regulatory lawyer, both in the automotive sector and in the security sector. So that was my expertise. What had happened was I was headhunted by a firm that was looking to replace the outgoing CEO from CFLA, who had been in the role for about 22–25 years. And initially I was hesitant, but having been on this sort of the other side of the fence, but never say no to any opportunities. And the further I got into the process, the more I realized that this was it was very interesting to me. Something I like about the CFLA is the industry itself. It's to me, this is what finance was meant to do. It helps with productivity and businesses to grow and ultimately to Canadian prosperity. So I felt there was an opportunity here for me to have a broader impact on Canada than I was having in my previous roles.
Sure. And do you remember your first conference and kind of introduction to the membership?
Yeah, it was much different. So, having been on the government side, everything's definitely bootstrapped, even if it doesn't need to be bootstrapped. The optics are really important. So to go to a private sector conference was incredible. I'll never forget. I recall rolling up to this beautiful hotel, and in front was this large Airstream trailer. I said, "Oh, that's a weird thing. You're at this luxury hotel and you've parked your trailer in the front." And then later that evening, as I'm walking out, it was actually one of our members, and he had converted the Airstream into a cigar lounge because his family didn't let him smoke cigars in the house. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And he just, as just for fun, brought it to the conference so everyone could have some scotch and smoke some cigars on the fringe of the conference. So, you don't see that on the government side for sure. So that was the fun side, but, definitely a hardworking group. I would love to be able to quantify the business that gets done on the margins of our conferences. It's just incredible.
Sure. I mean, I owe it to the associations, that I've been lucky enough to be a part of, CFLA included, throughout my 20 years in equipment finance, because you guys foster the environment for networking. You bring, from a business development perspective, when you go to one of your conferences, how many people do you typically have at the annual?
So we get about 500 delegates. The nice thing is they tend to be executive or C-suite level. So they really are the decision maker. So it is a great networking opportunity. we're probably the only conference that brings the industry together, both in terms of the lending side, but then all the services that sort of supply into them. So it's a great opportunity for them to do business with themselves. So structure some new deals, but also to find some service providers as well. Yeah.
Sure. And between that and the golf tournament, I mean, you have a great turnout every year for that as well.
We do. So when I first joined, that was it. We did a golf tournament in the spring and the annual conference in the fall. This year we have 12 in-person events and 20 events going on if you include our webinars. We've added an IT summit in the spring as well. So this is, focusing specifically on new technologies that can help the industry become more effective and efficient, and a legal forum. So, where those that are in the legal community in the industry, or sort of, benefiting, senior credit advisors that are benefiting from it, get together and discuss, what's new in law, what are some of the things that they're doing to address some, interesting issues. As an example, we had an interesting case out of Alberta where an emoji was used to sign off on a contract. So, these issues creep up, and it was the perfect forum to discuss. Be careful with the thumbs up when you receive a contract.
I was going to ask what the emoji was. Was it the guy going like this?
That would have been better. The thumbs up, it's less equivocal, right? Because does that mean, thumbs up, I received it, or is it thumbs up, I accept the terms of the contract? Unfortunately, the court interpreted it's thumbs up, I accept the terms of the contract.
That was actually the legal.
That was it. Yep. Yeah. So you can imagine the impact on the industry.
As an attorney, what were your thoughts on that? Like, just throw it away and start over again?
I almost fell off my chair. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it seemed a very equivocal circumstance. But context matters, I guess. And, if you get into it, that maybe a little bit less so, but from a quick reading, yeah, it was a pretty shocking outcome.
Interesting. I definitely learned something new.
For sure.
So that's amazing. Because it's been, I want to say, 4 years since I've been a member. Once I transitioned in my career. I would say it's probably pre-COVID. So it was always those two events. You had the golf tournament, I think the second week in June, and then sometime in September, you guys had your annual. So you guys are up to 20 now?
20 events, 12 in person. So we have, those 4 main, sort of, forums that we do. And then we have a number of sort of receptions. So for example, our Empowering Women Leaders committee, they put on a wine tasting every January. So in Canada, there's no dry January for us. We just jump right back into it.
You get the ice wine? You get the ice wine?
We do, yeah. We've done ice wine, so we do have themes. We had last January was New World versus Old World. Year before it was different sparkling wines. That was interesting. And so one of our members is actually she's professionally designated as a sommelier, so she's able to take us on these journeys, and it's wonderful, and it's a great opportunity to try wine that you probably wouldn't otherwise try, right? Particularly if you're not a wine aficionado, you kind of gets you out of your comfort zone, and you're not always drinking a Merlot or a Chardonnay or whatever it is that you're into. You get into a Cremant or other types of wines. We did fortified wines, so sherries and ports and things. So yeah, they're wonderful events.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know what year it was. Maybe 2016, 2017, when it was in Niagara Falls. Probably like 20 of us got a bus and went around to a bunch of wineries there. And I'm from upstate New York, so Finger Lakes. So you used some of that wine there, but you don't really, you get into some of the sweeter ones, but not the dessert sweet wines, like those ice wines.
You won't drink ice wine all night. It's a small amount goes a long way for sure. But we'll be back there. We're going to be 2028, I believe, or 2027. We'll be back in Niagara Falls.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then where are you? Winnipeg this year?
So we're in Winnipeg, then we're in Whistler, and then we're in Niagara Falls, and then it's looking like Calgary after that. But we're looking at some interesting locations. What we're trying to do now is, 2 years we'll go to a major city center, and then 1 year we'll go to somewhere interesting. And in fact, our events planner is going to be meeting representatives from the Yukon to see if that would be a viable option somewhere, you've never been. It'd be interesting. But, there's a push-pull there, right? Is it, when do you get to go to the Yukon for work?
Yeah, and what are the logistics of getting to the Yukon?
Well, that's what we're going to look into. And, we're not going to do that in January. How about that?
Yeah, anytime Hugh's like, yeah, we're putting on this concert in Winnipeg. I'm like, when? February. I'm like, pass. Like,
Winnipeg gets a bad rap. It's actually a beautiful city.
yeah.
And something I learned was the architect. If you go there, you see these beautiful buildings. Same architect who did a lot of work in Washington, D.C., had his first crack at it in Winnipeg. I had no clue. So you
I
get
was
that
just thinking more of just like when it's
classical.
minus 30 and you need to bundle up on the airplane before it takes off. That's right. I'm soft. Okay. I've lived in Arizona for almost 15 years.
They have a path system. You never have to breathe fresh air the entire time you're there.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the remainder of those 12 events, are those more like set by province, or the majority of them in Ontario?
So 2/3 of our members are in Ontario, so we do the bulk here. We do try to do as many regional events as possible, because obviously we're a national association. I want to make sure that we have something in each of the regions every year, for sure. And then they vary. The webinars tend to be they're less regional based and more sort of based on certain topics. So AI applications in the industry, identity. Authentication, anti-fraud, issues such as that the benefit can the industry can benefit from.
Yeah, that was going to be my next topic. Or what kind of trends are you seeing, and then what are members asking for education on?
So the two big hot topics in Canada right now is anti-money laundering. So for the non-bank members, they weren't required to adhere to the regulatory requirements of anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing. Now, a lot of the best practices that they engage in adhere to those regimes, but now you have to lay on the formal. You have to have a formal policy, people identified. Certain parameters around collecting and reporting back out to the regulator. So that's going to have a real outsized impact on our industry, particularly smaller members who don't necessarily have the internal resources to dedicate to something like this.
Sure.
And then something that I think that's unique to us compared to the U.S. is, I am sure that U.S. Industry is facing, fraud and theft and issues of that nature, but it's uniquely a problem here in Canada, particularly with automobiles. Canada had been identified as a donor country internationally for stolen vehicles. That the theft rate of vehicles in Canada was on par with the U.S. So given that the U.S. is roughly 10 times the size of Canada, it gives you, an idea of the extent of the problem here. And industry fraud also has become a significant issue. So, during the pandemic, we all went online. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of sort of our processes remain digital, and it sort of opened up opportunities for the criminals. So these are two issues that the association has really tackled. Right out of the gate on the auto theft, we authored a white paper that really got the conversation started here in Canada. Since then, we've had at least $250 million designated by various federal and provincial governments to tackle the problem. And this year, for the first time, so not this year, 2024, for the first time, we actually saw the numbers starting to creep in the right direction and tick downwards. Though we have seen an increase here in Toronto and in some other city centers of something I'd call violent car theft. So these are carjackings, home invasions. Really, it is a problem in Canada. And then on the equipment fraud, we've created a suspicious activity alert, and whereby we receive information about an individual or some type of a scam in a certain region and industry that's operating. We disseminate that out to the members just to give them a heads up and something for them to look to. And we're working on a project where maybe we can provide a service provide a lot more detail and maybe even automate it to the point that they can do an API and stream it in. So again, One of the taglines that we have as an association is, collective impact, Canadian prosperity. And typically we'd use that to, promote the industry itself as a real engine and driver to the Canadian economy. But you can apply that also on the association and the impact on the industry, where, it's an intensely competitive industry, as many are, but it brings them together in a way that they can now, positively benefit the industry as a whole. Rising tide lifts all boats, as they say.
Sure, sure. And then layering on top of what you just said, extremely competitive industry. I'm not sure what it was like in the government sector, but when you go to a CFLA conference and you're just like, okay, aren't you guys competitors? Why are you hugging him? What is going on here? What was that dynamic like, Michael, when you first kind of saw that in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. So having worked with regulators, it's like, you want to work in this province, pay me money, right? I mean, you had a monopoly and a little bit more than that, a requirement
Sure.
that anyone that wants to work in. So, coming to the other side, obviously it's very different, but you're absolutely right. It's one of the most collegial industries that I've ever had the pleasure of working in. It's yeah, as I said, it's intensely competitive, but that's business. But then when they come to the conference, it definitely is an opportunity for everybody to kind of take a breath, talk to each other. The amount of information and best practice that's shared amongst each other, it really is, it's amazing. And I think everyone understands, as I said, that rising tide lifts all boats. Increasing the professionalism and the best practice in the industry is better for everybody. And it's something we as an association also are taking to heart. We've increased our education offerings to help on board. So we have a program called Fundamentals, where we, if a company hires somebody into the industry, maybe they have a finance background, but not a background in asset-based lending and financing, they can take this kind of one-on-one program and sort of get familiar with the industry. And then we're working, I think, Reed Rakovich from the CLFP in the US. So we've adopted that to the Canadian context and are working with her, and we'll be launching that as well. And the idea, again, is allow for sort of, mid to senior industry members to get credentialized, have that recognized in the US, now in Australia, Canada, but in September. And I think that's going to be a real benefit, particularly to our broker community and those that work with them.
Perfect. Now you just have to sit there and say, instead of certified, it's going to be Canadian. Change the C's
So it's
around a little bit.
LFP. Yeah. I think we have working on that. Yeah. You heard it here first.
Sorry, Reed. Probably gonna. That's fantastic. Yeah. And then those courses, are they online or in person?
So the one-on-one program is online. So it's basically kind of animated slides, and at the end, instead of taking a test, you play this game called Be the Boss, where you apply the knowledge and sort of quasi real world applications. So clients coming to you with different problems, and when you're done, you should be able to sort of solve them for them. So different types of equipment, different type of business, different type of needs. So that's all done digitally. It takes about an afternoon to do. The CLP is much more involved, and there's an online component and an in-class component, and at the end there is an exam that has to be completed, and that's done. You do that online, but there's this sort of like digital proctoring, which is interesting.
Sure. And what's been the association's reaction to the more educational initiatives, Michael?
I think it's been good. There's definitely an appetite for it. We soft launched the CLFP that is coming to Canada, and we got a lot of interest in it. I wasn't sure, how that would go, because we didn't have the experience of it up here north of the border. But there is an appetite for it, and particularly, as I said, with that increase of fraud in the industry, having being able to signal, listen, I'm a professional, I take it seriously, I adhere to these best practices, and I signal that by having taken this course and making that investment in time and energy. Yeah, there's definitely seems to be an appetite for that kind of professional.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, we're starting to see even more of that at conferences. People just like, hey, what's going on with this regulation? What's going on with this? Is AI just as kind of a buzzword in Canada as it is here in the States? Like, what challenges are you seeing potentially with that? I mean, you think of fraud, and the alarm bells can go off a little bit.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, there's no panacea for any issue, but AI is definitely figuring into, as I said, making companies more efficient and effective, but also battling certain issues like fraud or identification. I often joke it's not artificial intelligence; it's almost augmented intelligence. It's helping you work, work more efficiently and effectively, as opposed to sort of taking over jobs. And in fact, on the anti-fraud side, for example, companies that layer on both an AI component but a human component tend to have the best outcomes in terms of sort of identifying any sort of fraud risks. So there is a huge appetite for it. In fact, that's why we created the IT Summit, to really double down on not just AI, like other technologies as well. But we haven't done an IT Summit yet without an AI panel and having discussion in and around what that can do. And I can even say, as an association, we've embraced it. I recall, the first time I used it when ChatGPT was launched, and just trying it out on my own, and using it now. What a difference! Just a little over a year has made it. It almost seems like a lifetime ago. I can't imagine not working with it. It's become that.
I mean,
that in our work.
I have a few 1099s that work for me as consultants, but I leverage that tool frequently just because it's just, it helps. It just can just be
Absolutely
more efficient.
Yeah, and this is where the conferences are so great, right? It actually almost forces you to, take not a break, but a step back from your day to day. Because, particularly, Jesse, I know you're probably like me, you're a small, I'm not a business owner, but, run a small company. I don't have people for that. So, I like to joke, I'm, head chef and chief bottle washer all at the same time. And I do a little bit of everything. And so when you go to a conference, you get to, it forces you to sit down and think a little bit more strategically. You're not in the weeds putting out fires like you do every day. My day-to-day job, it feels like every time I turn a corner, there's another corner. And that process is only speeding up, and it's exhausting. So to be able to step back, pull yourself out, pull the lens back a little bit, and start to think about, okay, AI, what can we do? Because I only feel we're scratching, like even us as an association, we're just scratching the surface of what this can do. And so there's a lot to be learned and a lot to bring back.
Same page. And yeah, I was, sure, working for a law firm, you had someone who did that for you, and now you sit there and it's like, well, who's going to do this?
Well, that's right. My wife always jokes. So when I left the Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council, was where I was the director of legal services. I came here. She's like my husband. She goes like a CEO. She puts like air quotes beside it, because I have, less than a quarter of the staff and less than half the budget that I had when I was working for this large regulator, which, we're about 150 people. And, we had an IT department and an HR department and a finance department. We don't have any of that here. We run very lean as an association. But the flip side is it really is the impactful that the work that you do and meaningful. And when you're small, you're also nimble, and you can pivot, and you can double down on things. You be a little bit more experimental in what you do. It's not like nudging a big ship, that takes a long time to course correct. So pros and cons to it, that's for sure.
Absolutely. How many people do you have on your staff?
So there's 6 of us currently. We'll probably be 7 by the end of the year. We've actually been stable at 5 employees for many, many years. But as I was speaking, we've got 12 in conferences from where we used to have 2. It's the same thing with our educational offering and the intelligence. As an association, we have 3 main pillars. So the predominant work that we do is advocacy work on behalf of the industry. But we have the sort of the networking elements and the professional development and the education and intelligence components. We're doing a lot more on all those as well. So we've had to bring on more staff. The more we're able to do for the members, the better for the membership. And it's actually had it's almost, I joke, it's a bit of a virtuous circle, right? Because the more we do, the more buzz it creates, the more members we get, the more members we get, the more resources we get, and the more we do, and then that cycle continues. And so we really have been in a modest growth trajectory as an association. It's been exciting to watch and to be a part of, and I hear the positive feedback from the membership. So we're not a not-for-profit, so it's, it's not just dollars and cents. That's our feedback. It's the work that we're doing. So it's much more qualitative than quantitative. And, that's what motivates me. It really is a pleasure to serve the industry and see its outsized impact on, as I said, Canadian prosperity.
Perfect. Well said, Michael. From a 200 members perspective, is that kind of where the association has been throughout the years, or is that trending up or even?
So prior to the recession in 2008, 2010, that time period, we were just over 200 members, but there's a huge consolidation that occurred at that time. And we went down to sort of mid to high 100, and we've hovered around there for many years. The recession was also a challenge for the industry. So coming out, we're sort of getting back to that, pre-recession numbers. We think there's some opportunity. And in fact, it's something we're looking to foster. We're going to be releasing a formal white paper in March in Ottawa, looking to, what I call funding the funders. So, getting more liquidity in the market, more capitalization. So small companies can service small to medium-sized businesses and help them grow. Probably much like the US, the bulk of the economy in terms of, corporate numbers are small to medium-sized businesses, even though they represent in Canada anyways, as just a little over or under 50% of GDP. So you've got, 99% of companies, but, impacting, 50% of GDP, but they need help. And again, that's where our industry, I think plays well, particularly. And there's an opportunity, I think, to do more of that. And then as a consequence, sort of, grow the pie. And then as we grow the pie, more opportunity for companies to come into our market, or homegrown financiers to grow their book of business.
Perfect. And then from an independent perspective to a bank, are you guys seeing some of the similar things that we're seeing here in the States, where the banks, because of liquidity and some of the other stuff, are kind of pulling back, and the independents are becoming now more power players?
Yes and no. Some of the consolidation was the banks acquiring some of those mid-ticket players, and sort of going a little bit down ticket a little bit to sort of to grow their book of business. But banks by design and by regulatory requirement are a little bit more conservative. Canada actually has one of the largest differentials for businesses between a small business and a large business in terms of the cost of financing. And partly that is, I think, due to not only a concentration, but also, since there's only so many small businesses, there's an impact on that as well. And then their cost of capital that they have to pass on to the consumer. So it's maybe we do have some mid-sized players, but as I sort of mentioned at the outside, we're a much smaller market. So to give you an example, whenever I go to the ELFA conference, it's quoted the size of the equipment finance industry in the US is about $1 trillion. In Canada, the auto and equipment finance and leasing industry is about $390 billion. So, you combine the two, and I'd say about a quarter of that is equipment. So it really is a much smaller marketplace than you see in the US. But I think there's an upside. There's a lot of opportunity for that, and we're seeing January has been a very busy month. There's a hunger for some growth and for some homegrown growth, and that's having a positive impact on the industry. As we go into 2025, we can talk about that. But 2024 started off a very challenging year. It ended on, I think there's a lot of high notes here in Canada, particularly with the declining interest rates. But there was also an increasing opportunity as we rounded out the year. We started it strong, and we'll see how we go into the year.
Perfect. Yeah, I know you mentioned like the 20 events, and the different initiatives you guys have from an educational perspective. Anything else on the forefront coming up this year that we didn't cover?
They talked about most of it. Something that'll be interesting this year for us to watch is you've gone through an election in the US and Canada. We're about to go through them. So as I said, the real value proposition of the association is that collective voice. When we knock on a policy maker's door as an association, it's a much louder voice than if an individual company does it, and also a much more trusted voice, because you're not speaking from the perspective of one company, but the perspective of an entire industry. And so in Ontario, we're going into an election at the end of the year. This is by far the largest province, and as I said, an outsized impact in the finance industry. So we've had some opportunity to shape some of that policy. We'll continue to do it when we come to the other side of the election. And a federal election is looming as well. You probably heard that our Prime Minister has stepped aside. In a parliamentary political system is a little bit different than what you have south of the border. So forced out of the role by the party. They're in a leadership search right now, but it's very unlikely that the current government is going to come out the other side of the election. I mean, you never know. A couple of months is a long time in politics. New leader has an opportunity to regalvanize things, but it does look like we're going to have a change here. And when that change happens, we're also, I think, it'd be well positioned to have an impact on some of the policies that this potential incoming government is thinking about. And increasingly, when I hear what the leaders of the Liberal Party are talking about, the equipment finance and auto finance industries are going to be center stage. I think people are realizing and waking up to the fact that you need a strong economy if you're going to have a strong country.
I mean, equipment finance is a driving force behind the economy. It'd be foolish not to.
Absolutely. Yeah, we joke it's the rocket fuel, right? I mean, you don't get anywhere without it. As I said at the outset, I really believe it's what finance was meant to do. If you go back to the roots of why are people borrowing money? Why are they leveraging? It's to grow, and that collective lift to the country, not just to themselves.
Michael, I ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So outside of your being a chief bottle washer and secretary for the CFLA, what makes you tick outside of your day-to-day job, sir?
Oh, you threw me there. I thought you were going to say a fun fact. So let me think. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I know most people are, talk about, the importance of work-life balance, and I don't deny it. But if I'm at home, I'm very family focused, and I have a daughter, and making sure she's taken care of, and driving her to lessons. I'm a big reader, so that's what I do for leisure. And I used to, coming into the role, you're always reading, Harvard Business Review and Drucker and things to make yourself more effective as a leader. Increasingly, I'm sort of going back to my roots, and my undergrad I did philosophy as a minor, so going back, reading a little bit of Marcus Aurelius and Plato and some of the old classics, Pliny the Younger, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so probably some people don't necessarily know, but that's sort of my leisure time is I like to spend it reading and that kind of stuff.
Well, with the commute that you have, right? Audiobooks. I mean,
I am all over. The podcasts have changed my life, I tell you. Yeah, I used to listen to books, like novels and things on the way. That I found one time I had a very long commute for a while. I got to work and I couldn't recall the commute at all because I was so into the book. So I decided, okay, enough of that. Well, I'll just listen to nonfiction. So a lot of history podcasts for sure.
Did you see that accident? What accident?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I could have been in it and didn't even know.
Can you hold on a second?
I'm looking for a red BMW. Yeah.
Michael, my last question I have for you is, what would be your value proposition for an organization that's in the industry but not yet a member of the CFLA, or even potentially a U.S. organization doing business in Canada? Like, why should these organizations join the CFLA?
So it'd be different at different stages. So one of the things I have found is if somebody is thinking of entering the Canadian market, one of the first things they'll do is they'll reach out to the CFLA. The intelligence that we're able to give, we're a little bit like Switzerland. So as I said, everyone's they're competitors, but they're also collaborators. And so we're able to collect data, aggregate it, anonymize it, and then put it out. So you get a sense of the size of the industry. You can benchmark yourself, again, compared to the industry. So there's a lot of tools available to somebody, you know, that's in the industry or coming into the industry. As I mentioned earlier, another opportunity is, you know, it is a dynamic, fast-paced, ever-changing industry. And to be able to come to our conferences, sit on a webinar, you know, all these an opportunity to sort of educate and increase your professional capacity in the industry. You need to do it. You need to carve that time out, and you know, we provide that as a resource. And then finally, you know, the networking and the business development side. It's the annual conference particular is the only time the industry gets together and you get everybody in one place, and it's an ideal opportunity. You know, you go to the bar at the, you know, at the hotel, and you know, the number of, you know, beginnings of deals being scratched out on the back of napkins that are going to be, you know, formalized in the coming weeks and months. There's no better place to do that than at the CFLA. So we really are here to serve the membership and the industry, and I think you know, at all stages of your company growth and your personal growth, there's something here at the CFLA that we can offer you to help you know, accelerate that growth and you know, that professionalism.
Excellent, sir. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Michael. Thank you for talking about your career in the CFLA. Hopefully our paths cross sometime in the near future to figure out this event list you have, because selfishly, I may have a baseball team that I follow right in your backyard. So always look for an excuse to get to Toronto.
The door is always open, and we hold a lot of in-house events, so we have a fully stocked bar that we can host you with.
Alcohol and beer and baseball, I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
There you go. There you go. Or hockey. I mean, this is Canada.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to get death threats. Absolutely, hockey. Awesome, sir. Well, I appreciate your time, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks, Michael.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, Jesse.